My Miami with Elizabeth Plater-Zyberk. In this episode, we explore Campo Sano, a community of duplex townhomes in Coral Gables, Florida.
As we thought about designing a series of townhouses, we came with the understanding that the townhouse in Miami has been a kind of low-rent residence. It's been a place of transience, and there is not a tradition of fine town housing, urban dwellings in South Florida. So this project and some others that we've worked on recently, we've tried to develop a strong image for all of these places in order to provide a good influence for future infill building and densification in South Florida as an alternative to the single-family house, which is part of suburban sprawl.
So Liz, why was this a difficult site to design for?
Campo Sano is designed for a piece of property that was difficult from the point of view that across the street is the service entrance of Doctors Hospital. It's a fairly busy road out front, and on the other side of the lots at the back is a golf course. So it has high ambitions, but a problem context.
In addition to being sandwiched between a golf course and a hospital, there was another site challenge.
It may not be visible immediately, but this was a series of duplex lots which were bisected several times by utility easements. And when you move through Campo Sano, you'll notice those gardens between the courts. Those gardens are the places for utilities, and so you'll begin to understand that the restrictions were really quite severe.
What were some of the design decisions you made to address that, the challenge of the context of the site?
So in this case, we felt it had to be particularly picturesque in order to overcome the hospital.
And why did you choose the Dutch Caribbean style for the facades?
There are a series of historic villages in Coral Gables that have various specific styles, and the Dutch Caribbean seemed like it would be a contribution or an addition to the ones that already exist in Coral Gables.
The city of Coral Gables has a tradition of garages or granny apartments that are usually behind the houses. Here they're in front.
In this case, we used the garages to be the buffer or the transition, the separator of the experience of the property from the street and the hospital on the other side. And then, as you can see, the ones with the granny flat above are connected to the main house and provide the terminating views of the courtyards.
You and your firm are famous for placemaking, creating extraordinary places. This is a relatively small-scale project, but talk about how this works successfully as creating a sense of place.
I think we did create a sense of place here, as is always our goal, by the spaces that are made, the image of the buildings. The color white was very important in this location, and there was really a wonderful response to it by the buyers, who have developed a great sense of community. They do a joint open house for over Christmas.
And if you had to pick one or two or three favorite details, really so a nuanced move that you really like, what would it be?
Of course, I think the gables are very important to the character of these houses. It's tricky, to develop decorative details when most of the work one tends to do these days is so much simpler. They could have been pretty hokey. One other aspect that's important, because these are in South Florida, and this is something we've tried to do with the South Florida houses, is the fact that there's not a continuous front wall. They have a crenellated front wall. The entry is set back, and you'll notice that, therefore, that gives a window on the side overlooking that entry, which implies that this is a building in a place where cross-ventilation, light from many sides, is appropriate. As opposed to a northern townhouse where being more hermetic and having the single front wall makes sense. So that's a kind of bow to the region.
And situate for me this project in the arc of your career.
Well, as you know, DPZ has long been involved in town planning projects at a much larger scale than this project. But over the years, we started as architects working on individual buildings, and we have continued that practice in order to inform the planning practice. In reverse, the planning practice then informs the architectural projects. And this one is at a very interesting scale because it's not only about the individual building, it's about the overall plan, the urban design, which indeed is smaller than a town plan or a neighborhood plan, but it requires the large-scale planning thinking of producing a sense of place, and at the same time it requires the detail of the individual building, including a very careful parsing of dimensions. This is not a project that you can do with a broad stroke planning diagram, and it's not a single building that works with purely an architectural or building design approach. It's that very challenging middle scale where you're thinking big and little at the same time. And so this kind of aggregation of buildings that increases density, teaches people about a sense of place, makes beautiful places that people enjoy being in, is really one of the most satisfactory things one can do.